Please summon Indy. Man's gotta know his limitations. Anyway, good evening, folks. So, this weekend for the showcase, we're checking out Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. And that got me thinking about the general impact that Dr. Jones has had on gaming culture and the like. So, I did a similar thing with the Aliens franchise, where I talk about how the franchise really influenced the industry. And you know what? I thought I'd just make it a recurring series here on the YouTube channel. So, welcome to what I would call Industry Influencers, a series where we take a look at a franchise, a notable franchise, and talk about how it has influenced the industry for better or worse. And tonight we are, of course, talking about Indiana Jones. So, first of all, Indiana Jones. It started with The Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was a collaboration between George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. When the film came out, it was intended to be a big send-up to the old film serials that the two would watch when they were kids, with the dashing hero on globetrotting adventures, finding treasure, dealing with bad guys, and wooing the lovely lady, you know, all that good stuff. And though they had a hard time getting a distributor for the movie, when it came out, it was just the biggest thing in the world, and it would spawn one of the most beloved franchises in film history. And with it being so damn beloved, of course it's going to find its way into other media. There have been comic books, a TV series, tons of merchandise, and of course, video games. And while I would say that Indiana Jones' influence on the gaming industry is quite as prominent as something like Aliens, it is impressive how many noteworthy video games have taken influence from the Indiana Jones series. So, to start things off, I want to bring attention to the Atari 2600 version of Raiders of the Lost Ark, released in 1982. Outside of the fact that it was one of the first games to be based on a movie, something that was sort of a new concept at the time, it also, I feel, is underrated in its contributions to the puzzle and adventure game genre. Essentially, what Raiders of the Lost Ark is just a series of elaborate puzzles where you just try to figure out how you reach the fabled Ark of the Covenant. Though very primitive by today's standards and extremely obtuse in design, it still was pretty noteworthy for the time, and I feel would have greater impact on the industry than people really give it credit for. A lot of the ideas that were introduced in that Atari 2600 game would be implemented and refined in The Legend of Zelda, and if you've checked out a lot of the other Zelda games in the series, you can definitely get an Indiana Jones vibe as you're playing the games, as you're making your way through the dungeons, solving puzzles, dealing with traps. Yeah, it does make you think of that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Indy is making his way through that temple in order to get at the Golden Idol. And there are plenty of other great scenes in the franchise like that too, like in The Last Crusade where he's dealing with the 3 traps to get the Holy Grail. And really, that's become standard for the action-adventure genre as well. In any action-adventure game, be it Uncharted, Tomb Raider, Prince of Persia, anything like that, there typically are some strong puzzle elements in there. Not only does this serve the purpose of breaking up the action in these games, but it also just really makes you feel like an archaeologist, and that's something that started with the original Raiders of the Lost Ark game. And even if there wasn't a game on the Atari 2600, I still feel like that would be standard for the genre because, again, people are such big fans of the Indiana Jones series. And Indiana Jones hasn't just influenced the action-adventure puzzle genre, he's actually had a pretty big hand in platformers. This scene in particular actually spawns an entire subgenre of platformers. Yeah, so the reason I showed that clip was because, according to the man himself, Jordan Metner, the genius mind behind the original Prince of Persia, that's where he got the idea for his seminal masterpiece. And if you, just by looking at the gameplay here, I think you can kind of see the influence there. Prince of Persia was the first of what you call a cinematic platformer, which is a type of platform that's defined by a characteristic weight to the character, unlike something like Mario or Donkey Kong, where you feel like you have complete control of your character. Every button will just do one simple thing, and then you can influence the character while they're in mid-air to easily control the weight. You can't really do that in the Prince of Persia games. For example, if you jump while you're standing still, you'll just jump straight up. If you're running, you will jump, but you also have to take into account how much distance there is that you need to cover. And that actually made for a really satisfying gameplay experience for the time. While Prince of Persia might feel very clunky, especially to fans of something like Super Mario Bros., once you get used to how your character controls and, get used to performing all these specific inputs in order to get your character to the end of the game, you'll find yourself enjoying a really satisfying experience. And Prince of Persia in itself will become a big influence on the genre moving forward, with a lot of games adopting the same control scheme and even the rotoscope graphics that you see here, like Out of This World and Oddworld. And that characteristic weight would also find its way into other games when games started going 3D as well. Tomb Raider, for example, you can definitely feel that Prince of Persia influence there in how Laura moves, really taking into account how far she can jump, how to manipulate the distance she is jumping without feeling like you can, manipulate her in mid-air. It feels very much like a 3D version of Prince of Persia, and even when Prince of Persia went 3D around the same time, it was often compared to Tomb Raider. And obviously Tomb Raider takes its cues from the Indiana Jones series as well. That's what inspired them to make this sort of globe-trotting action-adventure game, because of course it did. And even the boys at LucasArts would... one panel, this one. Even the boys at LucasArts would take influence from Tomb Raider as well, because when they did Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, the first game in the series to be a 3D platformer, as you can tell, it was essentially just Tomb Raider just swapping out Lara Croft for Indiana Jones. And you know what? That worked just fine. I feel like that your series has really become an influence when even the series itself is taking influence from the other games that influenced it, if that made sense. These days, that characteristic weight to the platformer is still present in a lot of action-adventure games like Uncharted and even Tomb Raider, still have that platforming element to it. And with technology advancing to where it is now, we can actually, create these elaborate set pieces that characterized movies like Indiana Jones, where the hero gets into these great big wild situations, where death is certain, inches away, yet they're always able to cling on to that lifeline and, just get out of that situation by the skin of their ass. Uncharted has done some amazing things with that. Probably the most famous being the plane scene here, which was even adapted into a motion picture. And Tomb Raider as well too. The Uncharted games have really set the standard for the action-adventure genre, I would say. And you know what? Uncharted is another game that takes its cues from Indiana Jones, so there you go. The last genre of games I want to talk about, and this might be a stretch to some people, but I do think the theory holds water, and that's the point-and-click adventure genre. Though, when it comes to LucasArts games, what most people remember is The Secret of Monkey Island, Maniac Mansion, Grim Fandango, Full Throttle, and all of that stuff. One that is often forgotten about are the Indiana Jones point-and-click games. These include a point-and-click adventure adaptation of The Last Crusade, as well as The Fate of Atlantis, which is a completely original story. And what made these games unique for the time was that they weren't strictly puzzle games like a lot of point-and-click adventure games at the time were. Fate of Atlantis actually introduced a new concept where you could take a different path through the game of one of three. One that would be focused on puzzles, one that would be focused on action, and I think another one that would be about talking your way out of different situations. And that's something that several other point-and-click adventure games at the time might have been trying to implement. But Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, as far as I know, is the one that really introduced this idea. Unfortunately, when Fate of Atlantis came out, point-and-click adventure games were sort of on the decline, so it didn't really leave as big a splash as other games did. That's probably why it's not talked about at length. But in 2010, 2011, I want to say, point-and-click adventure games started to make a comeback with the Telltale games, and I feel like they took a lot of influence from Fate of Atlantis because these games actually incorporated a degree of puzzle solving. Obviously, dialogue is a big deal. Talking to all the characters to try to get them on their side to help you, and being punished if you say the wrong things, at which point they will turn against you. And of course, some great QTEs as well to really get that action in there, and some great puzzles as well. You can definitely feel the influence of Fate of Atlantis there, even if it's not as pronounced as other games in the genre. So yeah, Indiana Jones has influenced a wide variety of games over the years, and that's a good thing because whenever the series does take a crack of having a video game at its own, they have a lot of reference work to work with. Last year's Indiana Jones and the Great Circle incorporates just about everything that we've talked about so far, with its weight-based platforming, the puzzle aspects of it, and even includes some other aspects to it, like stealth and everything. And while I feel like The Great Circle could have stood to copy other games a little bit more, I still think the game would have been better served if it was more close to Uncharted. There's still no denying that it was a pretty successful game, all things considered, and was one of the best games of last year for sure. But yeah, Indiana Jones, the gaming industry definitely owes it a tremendous deal. Again, while I wouldn't say it's as important to the industry as something like Alien, there are just too many games that have come out based around the franchise to ignore its influence. So every time you've played Uncharted, every time you've played Tomb Raider or a Telltale game, or even Zelda for that matter, you definitely have Dr. Jones to thank for it. But yeah, that's the impact of Indiana Jones on the gaming culture, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I have more coming, and I also hope that tomorrow night at 8 you will join me for the showcase as we check out Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. See you guys then.